Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my Identity Crisis. Now, I have always loved those if you like this book, you might like this book type of videos, especially the ones where they cross some kind of boundary. Things like, if you like this fantasy, you might like this sci-fi. If you like this YA, you might like this adult. So of course, I really wanted to do one for if you like this traditionally published book, you might like this indie. Unfortunately, I don't read a lot of modern, semi to majorly hyped traditionally published books, so I actually had to seek out a lot of them, and I loved all three of the books I have for you today. So now I'm having a little bit of a crisis. Am I a hype bitch now? No one knows, but I'm super excited to bring to you my picks for today. And we are going to start right off with the one you saw in the thumbnail. And that is because I have not one, but two indie picks for this one because I could not decide. So our traditional book is Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jake Kristoff. This is the latest, greatest YA sci-fi darling on BookTube, which is saying a lot because sci-fi does not get a lot of time on BookTube, but this one has, and I'm so happy about it. This is your standard queer found family space opera. And if you like queer found family space operas, I have a couple options for you. Option the first is Starmark Rising by Shami Stovall. This is the indie book that started me on the journey of reviewing indie books for my channel, and I still love it, and I am still pestering Shami Stovall for the next one. This is about a young man named Clevon who has been born and lived his entire life on this derelict space station, and he is ready to move planetside. So when this strange ship captain enlists him in her crew, promising him that he can get to planetside eventually, he goes hardcore. But that journey to get planetside, to make this ship captain the governor of a planet and get his plot, has a lot of twists and turns. Shami Stovall puts a lot of heart into her work. Clevon, despite the fact that he is basically an augmented human, is basically a soft boy. There is a lot of queerness because Clevon is bisexual. There's also an FF relationship in the book. There is a lot of things in the way of disability rep, and they talk about how all of the messing with genetics has left a lot of like almost glitches in the code, and now it's much more possible to end up with some kind of genetic defect. And so if you liked Finian's storyline with the struggles with that, you'll probably like that as well. The second pick for Aurora Rising is Star Nomad by Lindsay Buroker. This is one of my all-time favorite indie series. It is, again, space opera, found family, about a pilot named Elisa who fought in the war to destroy the evil empire. Evil empire was destroyed, but now she's stranded on this desert planet and wants nothing more than to get home to her daughter. But to get home to her daughter, she first has to find her mother's derelict freighter and then passengers to pay their way so she has the money to get home. And these passengers have a lot of demands, and it takes her all around the galaxy on various errands when all she wants is to get home. It also explores things like war and the effect that it has. If you like that aspect of Aurora Rising, what happens when a lot of people have died and you're trying to recover from it. It also has a relationship very similar to the one you see between Aurora and Cal in Aurora Rising. Leonidas and Elisa are probably my OTP of last year at least, if not also this year, and it's very slow burn, and I'm super excited. And the nice one for this one is that all of the books are out. I believe it is 8 books long, and none of them are above like 200 pages, so it's a quick read, but you can read the entire series without having to wait, which you can't do for any of these other ones. I would highly, highly suggest that one. I am a huge fan. My next traditional book is actually one that I purposely read for this video. I read it, realized that the synopsis was similar to an indie book I'd loved, and so read it purposely hoping that it would be similar. And it was. And that book is Cersei by Madeline Miller. This is a strong feminist retelling of Cersei's story, The Witch of Aia. And if you like strong feminist retellings, I highly suggest that you read Pomegranate by Nicole Scarano. This is a gender-bent retelling of the Hades myth, wherein Hades is not the brother of Poseidon and Zeus, but was once the immortal woman that Zeus was in love with. In marrying Hera, he has to cast her aside, and she ends up being thrown down into, well, Hades, the underworld, but finds her strength there and becomes the god of death that she always was meant to be. And seeing a woman go from being sad that this dude doesn't want her to being a badass deity in her own right was fantastic. My favorite scene will always be the moment where she literally screams at the gods, "I am the god of death!" And I reread that like 10 times. It is the first in a series, and the sequel is not out yet. That's another one that I am pestering the author for, and that's the beautiful part about indie books, is that if you read an indie book and love it, and you're not quite sure what's coming next, you can just chat them all up on Twitter all you want. It's fantastic. I really loved this one, and I think if you liked Cersei, you will too. The third and final traditionally published book is actually the one that started it all. I received an ARC of this from Bookish First, a raffle site, and I didn't really know how hyped that was on BookTube at the time, but that is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I do have the physical book, but I currently lent it to my mother because I have become the person in the family that lends out the books. So this was fantastic. It was the queer YA body horror that I didn't know I needed. But if you would like more queer YA body horror, I suggest you read The Songbird's Refrain by Julian Maria. This is all about a young lesbian named Elizabeth who feels like her life is going nowhere and she doesn't understand why. It feels like she's an NPC in her own life. And then comes across this strange art show, like one of those things where it's like, is it a carnival? Is it an art show? Or is it just art? And she sees this almost like a creature in a cage, and she realizes it's not a creature. It's a woman covered in feathers. And on that same night that woman dies, Elizabeth wakes up the next morning to find herself in that cage, and the feathers begin to grow. And I loved this premise since the first moment I read about it, and when the author asked me for a review, I was hardcore yes. So I would highly suggest this one. The body horror isn't quite as much as Wilder Girls, as it is just Elizabeth that is focused on the horror aspect, but reading about like the bumps that she's getting in her skin and how the feathers start sprouting, and it was so bad, but also like so good in that body horror way. It also has more queerness, as there are multiple FF relationships over the course of the story. There's also more of a resolution than was in Wilder Girls for why this is happening. It's much more fantasy-esque to Wilder Girls' sci-fi-esque. So if you were looking for a hardcore sci-fi, this might not be the book for you. However, if you wanted a little less body horror and a little more queerness, this is exactly the book you should check out. That is all I have for this one. I'm not gonna lie, like just those 3 traditional books I had to seek out. But I would not be against doing this again in the future. I would just have to seek out traditional books that A, I both wanted to read, and B, sounded like indie books I like, which I guess if they sound like an indie book I like, I'd probably be interested in reading them. But if you would be interested in any of these books, let me know. If you've read any of the traditional ones and you have any other comparisons you'd like to draw, please leave that in the comments down below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.